Indeed, it was a surprise to us. I mean, I couldn't believe it when I heard it yesterday. I believed that he couldn't be. He simply texted me the day before. Everything's just too much, and everything seemed kind of unreal. The world was horrified by Ozzy Osbourne's unexpected demise. After a long silence, Tony Iommi finally spoke, and his remarks shocked supporters. Something was unusual about Ozzy that evening, Iommi said. He was unable to fully express it until it was too late. What did he observe? And had Ozzy already written this farewell in her eyes? You will be rendered stunned by the reality of their last moments. Goodbye that nobody anticipated. Devastating news woke the world up on July 22, 2025. The renowned Black Sabbath frontman and Lord of Evil, Ozzy Osbourne, had died at the age of 76. The music industry and beyond were rocked by the announcement. The loss of a man whose voice, wild energy, and dark charisma helped define heavy metal for more than 50 years was difficult for fans, fellow musicians, and international media outlets to cope with. Only a few weeks prior, Ozzy had performed what would be his last act, while standing beneath the bright lights of Birmingham's Villa Park Stadium. Despite having Parkinson's disease and having undergone numerous spine operations, he was placed on a special leather throne, and yet managed to provide a moving and eerie performance. Nobody on stage or in the audience realized this would be his last farewell. Many people didn't expect Ozzy's death to be a gradual decline. After his last performance, he reportedly felt better, and he was even considering going back to the studio for a final song. However, Ozzy reportedly passed away quietly in his sleep at his Buckinghamshire home, just one day after going to a private supper with his bandmates. He was accompanied by his wife, Sharon Osbourne, and their kids. It's difficult to accept Ozzy's absence. He was alive, electrifying, and controlling the stage at Villa Park, just a few days before he passed away. One final job. A momentous event occurred in Aston, Birmingham, on July 5, 2025, when the original members of Black Sabbath got back together for what would be their last show. Back to the Beginning was more than simply another concert. It was the last curtain call for one of the most significant bands in music history, and a moving ode to the city where it all began. Fans were in awe of Ozzy Osbourne's spectacular debut as she battled severe stages of Parkinson's illness. He was sitting on a specially made leather throne, with wings that was positioned in the middle of a simple stage that honored the eerie and gloomy style of Black Sabbath. Ozzy was obviously weak, yet his spirit was far from weak. His vocals reverberated with rawness, thankfulness, and nostalgia as he gave it his all in that particular moment. Over 45,000 spectators packed Birmingham's outdoor stadium, while an additional 5.8 million watched live online. One of the decade's most popular live music events was the concert. To attend this farewell, some admirers had flown across continents. Many were aware that they would never see the band again, particularly in light of Ozzy's deteriorating health in recent years. A legendary roster of supporting bands attended the event, adding to the night's intensity. Slayer, Tula, Pantera, Guns N' Roses, and Metallica each took the stage to honor the metal godfathers, in addition to performing. Several performers talked about how Ozzy and Black Sabbath had influenced their careers in between sets. The stadium had an electrifying vibe that was equal parts farewell and celebration. The concert was as significant behind the scenes as it was large. According to reports, Ozzy expressed how important this performance was to him. He persisted on performing one final song for the bandmates and fans who had supported him for more than 50 years. Despite the doctor's reservations, close sources said he stated that rather than watching from a hospital bed, he would like to perform live in Birmingham. It was also a positive factor. An estimated $140 million was raised through donations from worldwide streaming, ticket sales, and merchandising. In recognition of the band's working-class heritage and dedication to their community, the money was donated to Birmingham Children's Hospital and Cure Parkinson's, a cause near and dear to Ozzy. The stadium's lights went down, and the audience fell silent as the last iconic notes reverberated. With tears in his eyes, Ozzy held up a shaky hand. Beside him, equally moved, were Geezer Butler, Bill Ward, and Tony Iommi. Pure music, enduring fraternity, and an audience that recognized this was more than simply a concert, where all present no pyrotechnics or ostentatious effects. It was in the past. Back to the Beginning became more than just a title that evening. It was the final shout of heavy metal's original rulers, a farewell, a tribute, and a full-circle moment. Upon his passing, tributes from all across the world poured in. In their condolence messages and recollections, Metallica, Elton, John, Slash, and even Coldplay referred to Ozzy as one of the finest performers in history. To honor the life of a working-class lad who rose to fame, fans gathered outside Black Sabbath's childhood home in Aston, Birmingham, and lighted candles outside the band's former studio. All eyes were on one guy, Tony Iommi, as tributes came rolling in from all around the world. Fans of the brother-in-arms waited to hear from the majority. In regards to Ozzy Osbourne, Tony Iommi speaks up. Tony Iommi, Ozzy Osbourne's lifelong friend and Black Sabbath bandmate, finally spoke out on July 23, 2025, a day after the world was informed of his death at the age of 76. Iommi told ITV News that the loss was unreal and that it wasn't until he woke up the following morning that the full impact of it hit him. It hit me like a ton of bricks when I woke up. He claimed that losing a fellow musician was not the only thing causing the pain. It was about losing a person who had supported him through decades of highs and lows, mayhem and invention, notoriety and notoriety. Tony disclosed that Ozzy had conveyed a strong wish to perform one more time in their hometown of Birmingham in the weeks preceding his passing. He had intended to stand in front of the audience one final time for a basic and sincere reason, rather than for a grand show. Iommi claims that Ozzy wanted it to be a fitting farewell and a way to express gratitude to the supporters who had supported him for over 50 years. Tony's voice broke with emotion as he continued, "I want to go out and do what I love and where it all started." Although Ozzy's health unfortunately prevented that last performance, the concept itself had a profound effect on everyone who knew him. In the same homage, Tony talked about his last days with Ozzy and how he had discreetly bid farewell to the band, as well as the fans. "The news is so devastating that I'm at a loss for words. No one else will ever be like him." Tony said, "Geezer, Bill, and I lost our brother. Only someone who understood the genuine Ozzy could understand the weight of what he was saying. It had nothing to do with the reality program, the dramatic headlines, or the stage antics. The story was about a man who inspired millions of people despite overcoming his personal struggles." Iommi's heartfelt homage struck a deep chord with admirers around. Condolences, old pictures, and heartfelt remarks were all over social media. Sabbath's classics were played often on radio stations. Pop legend Elton John and Metallica's James Hetfield were among the public celebrities and musicians that joined the chorus of mourning. Ozzy was obviously more than simply a heavy metal legend. His influence cut across generations and genres, making him a cultural figure. Since their relationship was never routine or fleeting, Iommi's remarks were laden with profound sadness. It was a musical and brotherly trip that lasted a lifetime. Let's take you back to the beginning. The enduring tale of Ozzy and Tony's initial encounter. Before fame, friends, Tony Iommi and Ozzy Osbourne were just two youngsters surviving on the gritty working-class streets of Birmingham, England, before the world recognized them as heavy metal legends. Their story did not start in a studio or on stage. Both were enrolled at Beerfield Road School in the early 1960s, and it started in the classrooms and hallways there. At the time, industry characterized Birmingham as a city. From manufacturing chimneys, smoke flowed out. The fragrance of machinery and metal filled the air, and most lads were supposed to spend their futures on the manufacturing floor rather than in front of a stage. Although life was difficult, it was also straightforward and honest. It meant having dedicated parents, few frills, and restricted budgets for children like Tony and Ozzy. Born John Michael Osbourne, Ozzy grew up in a crowded home in the Birmingham neighborhood of Aston, as the fourth of 6 children. He was frequently regarded as the class clown who got into mischief and made people laugh. He had trouble with schoolwork, particularly writing and reading, but his charisma compensated for it. Ozzy has frequently said that his life was transformed when he heard the Beatles song, "She Loves You," as a teenager. Even though he wasn't aware of it at the time, it provided him a feeling of direction. In contrast, Tony Iommi was more reserved and solemn. Raised in Aston as well, he was a dedicated individual who kept to himself. Despite his early passion in music, he was unaware that it would influence his destiny. Tony was the type of student that appeared more reticent, observing rather than talking, whereas Ozzy made his presence known with jokes and pranks. Something sparked between them in spite of their differences. Although they did not immediately become close friends at school, they were aware of one another. The harsh regulations, harsh teachers, the shared surroundings, and the grim prospect of industrial life were what ultimately forged a relationship. They had both experienced what life has to offer if they had taken the typical route. They both secretly wished for something more. Even after school, their paths kept crossing because they lived only a few streets apart. What began as a passing acquaintance developed into a deep bond. Tony would think back on those school days years later and recall how Ozzy's enthusiasm was evident even in those early days. These two boys from Aston unwittingly carried the spark of something uncommon in a city that didn't often create rock stars. It was only a relationship formed in schoolyards, smoke-stained sky, and aspirations too great for Birmingham before the fame and music. Now let's tell you how these two naive school pals from Birmingham smoke-filled alleys ascended from modest beginnings to become rock legends and dominate the music industry. The Black Sabbath's rise. Black Sabbath was the moniker of the musical revolution that started to take shape in the center of Birmingham in the early 1970s. Ozzy Osbourne's evocative and emotive vocals and Tony Iommi's deep, riff-driven guitar work served as the band's signature sound. Introducing the world to a harder, darker side of rock music, fans immediately appreciated what they were hearing, while detractors at first found it difficult to describe. They were seeing more than simply a new band. Heavy metal, a whole new genre, was born. The spooky sound of thunder and church bells launched their 1970 self-titled debut album, Black Sabbath, instantly distinguishing them from their peers. The gloomy, unvarnished mood of the album encapsulated the anxiety and unpredictability of the working-class existence they were so familiar with. The song's themes of war, paranoia, and the paranormal struck a profound chord with a generation that was experiencing social upheaval and political upheaval. Paranoid became their breakout album and was released a few months later. The album catapulted them to global prominence with classics like Iron Man, War Pigs, and the title track, Paranoid. It demonstrated the worldwide popularity of their music as it rose up the charts in both the US and the UK. The band's strength, passion, and integrity drew many fans. Iommi's distorted, heavy guitar tone, combined with Ozzy's piercing, emotive voice, produced an unprecedented sound. Those early albums' success wasn't a coincidence. Over the course of the decade, Black Sabbath released a number of significant albums, such as Master of Reality, Volume 4 Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath, and Sabotage. Every album kept pushing the envelope. The lyrics examined subjects like addiction, mental health, and the shadowy side of celebrity. While Iommi's guitar playing grew increasingly creative and frequently layered with many recordings, Iommi and Osbourne's connection remained strong in spite of personal struggles and escalating group conflicts. In an interview, Iommi once said, "What we created together was bigger than any one of us." That statement sums up both the extent of their success and the underlying artistic understanding they had. Black Sabbath played to packed houses in North America, Europe, and other countries during the 1970s. They developed a devoted following that was multi-generational. Their impact started to spread throughout the music industry, influencing artists who would eventually attribute the development of metal to Sabbath, including Metallica, Iron Maiden, and Slayer. Black Sabbath sold more than 75 million albums globally by the end of the decade. They were more than just Birmingham musicians. Rock music was redefined by these international titans. Additionally, there were difficult periods that put their bond to the ultimate test. Let's see how they overcame these obstacles and maintained the relationship that began long before their notoriety. Reunion and trials. It was never an easy ride for Black Sabbath. Personal problems and interpersonal disputes reached a breaking point by 1979. In particular, for Ozzy Osbourne, it was challenging for the band to function because of years of rigorous touring, pressure from the music industry, and Ozzy's growing reliance on drugs and alcohol. The remaining members, under the leadership of Tony Iommi, made the painful choice to split from their long-standing frontman after several attempts to keep things together. An era came to an end with the separation. Later on, Ozzy acknowledged that leaving Black Sabbath was a terrible period in his life, but it also marked the start of his solo career. Iommi took it upon himself to preserve the Sabbath name in the interim. He experimented with several bands and vocalists over the course of the following 20 years. Even though singers like Ian Gillan, Tony Martin, and Ronnie James Dio each contributed a unique energy to the band, the lack of the original chemistry was always noticeable. Even though the music was still strong, both critics and fans frequently wished the original lineup would come back. Behind the scenes, Iommi and Ozzy's relationship never really faded. As they grew older, both men looked back on their early years with respect and fondness. As time started to mend old scars, even the most severe hardships couldn't destroy their shared history, which was based on friendships formed in school, and musical discovery. The eagerly anticipated reunion took place in 2013. 13 is a new studio album that was released by the original trio of Iommi, Osbourne, and Geezer Butler. The album was praised for bringing back the unadulterated intensity of their early work and was a commercial triumph, debuting at #1 in several countries. It was not only a comeback, it was a new beginning. The band started a huge globe tour once the record was released. The reunion was viewed as a success, even if drummer Bill Ward did not accompany the tour because of conflicts. The news that Iommi and Ozzy would be performing together again brought joy to fans everywhere. Although Ozzy's passing signaled the end of a musical era, Tony Iommi thinks his legacy will endure forever. Let's examine how Iommi perceives Ozzy's enduring influence on the rock and metal community. Legacy as seen by Iommi. Losing Ozzy Osbourne meant more to Tony Iommi than simply the conclusion of a musical career. It was the loss of a friend, a brother, and someone who had been in his life for more than 50 years. Iommi encapsulated the sorrow of millions worldwide in the tearful days after Ozzy's passing, in July 2025. With the weight of years spent together on stage, backstage, in studios, and on the road, he uttered the simple words, "There's never going to be another Ozzy." It was a farewell to a person whose soul influenced the development of rock music itself. Not merely to a colleague, Iommi thought Ozzy was aware that it would be his last bow. According to Iommi, he gave it his all before stealthily leaving. Ozzy's love for music, and his dedication to finishing his journey with his bandmates and fans exactly where it started were both demonstrated by this gesture. Record sales and accolades were not mentioned by Iommi when discussing Ozzy's legacy. Rather, he talked of times when they laughed and overcame hardships together. In a low, thoughtful voice, he remarked, "God, we go back so many years. There was one Ozzy, and that's it." Ozzy's voice and the chaotic charm he brought to every room he visited made him indispensable to Iommi. Ozzy has left a lasting legacy in the music industry. He was the untamed frontman that revolutionized the sound and feel of heavy metal. His unadulterated, passionate, and instantly identifiable voice formed the essence of Black Sabbath. Ozzy's shadow stretches big over the rock world, from young fans who first discovered Paranoid to international heavyweights like Metallica and Elton John, who have lauded his influence. That heritage is special to Iommi. It endures not only in the records and tours, but also in the enduring relationship they developed in Birmingham's streets and factories. Despite Ozzy's passing, Iommi thinks his legacy will endure forever. Every fan who dials up the volume will hear it roaring through their speakers. How do you feel about the strong bond between Tony Iommi and Ozzy Osbourne? Leave a comment with your ideas.